Hi friends and companions along this path of spiritual practice. Zazen is our posture with which we meet the totality of our lives. The monastery is no escape. Our spiritual practice is surely not about an escape. Our posture, our Zazen meditation practice, is really about facing the totality of our lives. Like many of you last week, I saw that split screen image, the violence at the Capitol building juxtaposed with breaking a barrier in the elections in Georgia. And I try to make sense of those two images on the split screen. Each story proclaiming democracy, right? And the tension between those two images that felt like a paradox. The greatest, most profound, and most important truths are paradoxes. The only thing that we truly have are the things that we give away, is a paradoxical truth. Commitment is only found in real commitment, is another example of a great paradoxical truth. In Zen Buddhism, these paradoxical stories and dialogues are often contained in what we know as Zen koans. This is one of the familiar koans, number 28 from the collection called the Mumun Guan. There is a young monk whose name is Dejans, and Dejans is incredibly bright and studied. In fact, he is the greatest scholar of his day, of the Diamond Sutra, one of the most difficult texts in the perfection of wisdom genre. But something happens to Dejans, that's a different story. But something happens to him that puzzles him and shakes him to his core. He's no longer sure of the sutra, of Buddhism. He's in fact no longer sure of himself, his very identity. And he is told that Zen Master Lungtan is nearby and that he might go there and consult with Zen Master Lungtan. So the koan, case number 28, begins right there. Dejans visits with Zen Master Lungtan late into the night, talking together, so that Dejans might reclaim his orientation, his sense of certainty, who he is. Zen Master Lungtan realizes that the day is spent and it is getting dark. And so he says, maybe we should retire and pick this up later. Dejans removes the screen and looks outside, and he sees that it is dark. And so he says to Zen Master Lungtan, it's really dark outside. And at that moment, Master Lungtan lights a candle and hands it to Dejans. But just as Dejans is about to receive the candle, Master Lungtan blows out the candle. And the koan ends by saying, Dejans was awakened. He saw. I remember being given that koan years and years ago, and of course the question is, how did he awaken? What did he see? Was Zen Master blowing out the candle diminishing vision or actually helping Dejans to see more? This is a paradoxical story. The koan is asking us to realize that the things that come out of the darkness and into the circle of light are simultaneously visible, and what comes into the light conceals the darkness from which they have come. Not only conceals the darkness, but makes Dejans forgetful of the fact that the greater reality, the greater truths come out of that darkness and reside in that darkness. We cling onto this candle, this self-circumscribed circle of knowledge and certainty and identity, and we cling to it because we think that that's what reality is. That's where we feel powerful. That's where we feel a sense of agency. That's where we sort of understand and can control the direction of our lives. That's where our version of democracy and our history as a nation makes sense to us. The initial stage of stepping into this paradoxical koan begins with a recognition that the darkness is so much greater, that what we see is just a tiny circumference of light. Master Lungtan gives us a light and blows it out, and in doing so is actually challenging us with a gift of darkness, inviting us to step into the shadows, the darkness upon which our history as a nation, upon which our history as a democracy is really built. You and I, in our spiritual practice, we are tempted to bypass the emotional and spiritual depth of what the spiritual practice is asking us to experience, because paradoxical truths are difficult, not only because they are intellectually challenging, but because paradoxes refuse to yield their truth without asking of us the courage to risk ourselves in humility and wonder, in open-hearted engagement, in courageous action, to really allow the shadow and the dark side of our history to step into our awareness. And so, my friends, we take our posture of openness, of inviting that darkness until we can begin to see darkly. And so we take our posture and we continue with our spiritual practice.